So in today's video, I'll be discussing the top 4 realistic trade partner teams that the Knicks could discuss a deal with in the 2022 NBA draft. And last night, New York ended up with the 11th pick in the 2022 draft lottery. And even though they weren't able to move up last night with their 9.4% chance of doing so and moving up into the top 4, they could still pull it off by a trade. And with the way things transpired last night in the draft lottery, the Knicks have several opportunities to trade up in this year's draft. And that would especially be more realistic if they have their eyes set on players like Ben Mathurin or Jaden Ivey. So with all that being said, now let's get into the first team that the Knicks can negotiate a deal with that is in the top 10. So the first team that New York could negotiate a deal with in this year's draft would be the Portland Trailblazers at pick number 7. And out of these 4 teams off the bat, I already think that Portland would be the likeliest trade scenario for New York, mainly because it should be easier for the Knicks to trade from 11 to 7 than it would be to trade from 11 to 4. And another reason would be that New York would be able to potentially trade a player like Julius Randle in the deal, which would open up space for Obi Toppin to start at the power forward position and would clear up a lot of cap space for the Knicks for 2023. And a potential trade idea would include Julius Randle on the 11th pick going to Portland and the Trailblazers sending Eric Bledsoe as an expiring contract and the 7th pick to the Knicks. And with this trade, Portland would get a nice secondary player to Damian Lillard and a potential starting lineup of Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons, Josh Hart, Julius Randle, and Yusuf Nurkic could be a playoff contending team in the West. And there could be a larger trade where New York also sends players like Evan Fournier or Alec Burks. So with all that said, now let's get into the second team New York can trade with. So the second team in the top 10 that the Knicks could make a deal with would be the Indiana Pacers at pick number 6. And Indiana's spot right now is also interesting because they're at pick number 6 and that's where the Knicks could get lucky and select someone like Shaedon Sharpe or Jaden Ivey. And overall, I think the Indiana Pacers would be pretty intrigued with the possibility of pairing up Julius Randle and Miles Turner as their frontcourt, as both are really close friends from Texas and they always work out together in the off seasons. And a possible trade idea would be involving the Knicks getting Malcolm Brogdon and the 6th pick, and also the Pacers would be getting Julius Randle, the 11th pick, and a young player like Cam Reddish. And I think it would be worth it if the Knicks could select a player like Benedict Mathurin, Shaedon Sharpe, or even Jaden Ivey if we get lucky. And with that out of the way, let's get into the third team that the Knicks could make a trade with in the top 5. So team number 3 that has the 5th pick in this year's draft is the Detroit Pistons, and they could move it as well. And last season, Detroit was one of the worst teams record-wise in the NBA and were likely tanking for a top 5 pick in this year's draft. But it still has veteran players like Corey Joseph and Jeremy Grant. And they could be interested in someone like Julius Randle, who's still only 27 years old and kind of fits their timeline. And he could be a second or third option for the team behind players like Cade Cunningham, Sadiq Bey, or Jeremy Grant. And I will say that this is the least likely option out of the top 4. And this is because of the uncertainty of what the Pistons will do with someone like Jeremy Grant as a veteran player. But if they decide to keep him, they could move him to the small forward position. Sadiq Bey would play shooting guard and Cade would be the point guard. And they could acquire Julius Randle on draft night to be the power forward of the team long term with Jeremy Grant and a center like Isaiah Stewart or Marvin Bagley. And that would be a balanced, fun young team to watch offensively and defensively. And they could even be competitive in the East with a 7th or 8th seed potential. And the Knicks could trade Julius Randle, the 11th pick, and a young player or pick like Cam Reddish. And Detroit would send the 5th pick and expiring contracts or trade exceptions to the Knicks. So with that said, now let's get into the 4th and final team in the top 4 that the Knicks could trade with. So the 4th and final team that has the 4th pick in this year's draft that New York could discuss a deal with would be the Sacramento Kings. And Sacramento could also trade this pick because they're looking to make the playoffs next season with acquisitions such as Domantas Sabonis and with players that they have with De'Aaron Fox and Harrison Barnes as their veterans. So they're definitely not in full rebuild mode, and they could be able to acquire someone like Julius Randle if they're interested in him, and with a front court of Randle and Sabonis. And they would send Harrison Barnes as an expiring contract to the Knicks and the 4th pick, and the Knicks would send the 11th pick, Julius Randle, and definitely some more assets like Cam Reddish and a future pick or two as well. And this would only happen if New York is extremely interested in someone like Shaedon Sharpe or especially Jaden Ivey. So with that all being said, let me know in the comment section down below which team do you think would be a realistic trade partner with New York for if the Knicks want to move up. And if you found this video entertaining and informative and want to see more New York Knicks draft content like this, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and it's been KNYT here and I'm out. Peace.